Oftentimes when we're doing a trade show, people will come in the booth and ask us what size design they could use on their quilting machine. And the first thing that we always ask is, what size is their throat space? And sometimes people don't know the answer to this. The way that you would measure your throat space is pretty basic. This is the back wall of the machine, and this is your needle bar. You would just measure the distance between the back wall and the needle bar. In this case, this is a 24-inch machine. This is a Q24 by Bernina. That is just the basic start of how you would figure out what size design you can do. Right at the moment, I have the ruler table on my machine, and with the ruler table I'm going to lose a few inches of my quilting space. If I take the machine all the way back to as far as it will go, I'll go ahead and drop the needle down and pull my thread up. Now I'm just going to stitch a straight line down to show what the maximum space I have on the machine as it's set up now. I'm going to give myself a little line to measure, and then I'm just going to come straight forward. This is pretty basic right at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my thread up and pull the machine out of the way. Now this is the maximum design space that I have with the ruler table on, and as it's set up right now, this gives me 16 inches. Remember, I had 24 inches from the back wall to the needle bar, but I only have 16 inches of design space as it's set up right at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and pop off my ruler base. Now that's going to give me another couple inches. So I'm going to go back again to the back as far as I can go, drop the needle down, pull up my thread, I'm not going to clip that because it's not going to really be in my way. And I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way forward again. But this time, because my ruler table is off, that's given me another couple inches. Now this measurement without the ruler base, that gives me 18.5 inches of design space just to start off with. There are a couple other things that might change that. One of them is the position of my handlebars. With the handlebars pushed too far back, I could lose another inch of space. So that's just one more factor that you have to consider. There are some other things that are going to reduce the amount of space that you have for design. As the quilt gets rolled up on this take-up bar, what you will have is this will keep getting fatter and fatter. If you have a large quilt, like a king-size quilt, by the time you're done, this could be 2 or 3 inches bigger than it is now, which would prevent the machine head from going back farther. So we have to reduce that amount, which is an unknown, because we don't know exactly what size the quilt will be. Another factor that could change the size of this take-up bar is how many battings you're using and what type of batting. Oftentimes now, machine quilters are using a cotton batting with a wool batting over top. Some quilters are even using up to 3 battings. Well, those 3 battings rolled up on the take-up bar are obviously going to increase the size of the take-up bar, which will in fact decrease the amount of space that you have for your design area. Also, really high loft polyester batting would also do the same thing. It's going to increase this size of the take-up bar and decrease the amount of size that you have for your design. So if you figure without the ruler table, if we have 18.5 inches to start, we may lose up to 4 inches, maybe even more, depending on the size of the batting and the size of the quilt. So we're going to just mark that as a loss. So we're down here to a 14.5 inch design that we're able to do with the quilt that we have. So the ruler base is one factor, the position of the handlebars, the type of batting, and the size of the quilt all are going to be things that factor in on how big of a design that we could do. All of the Urbanelementz designs have information here on the header that tell you exactly the size of that pattern. If the patterns are listed, this is the length. All of our pantos are listed at 144 inches long, so they would go the full length of a king size quilt. Also, we have the width of the pattern, which is here. This particular one is 10.75 inches, 10 3/4 inches, so that width would certainly be able to work on this machine. Sometimes you can go with a smaller design, but that would just mean that what you would be doing is rolling up the quilt more often and doing additional rows. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you'll have a pattern that's perfect for the quilt, maybe a holiday pattern that you're not going to do very often, but it works perfectly, and it may be only a 6-inch design. It will interlock beautifully on the quilt. You'll just be rolling it up a few more times, which isn't a problem when you're doing something special or something that you may not be doing quite as often. If you're just trying to finish something quickly, then obviously you want the largest design possible that you're able to do on your machine. Now, just as the illustration, this machine is listed as a 24-inch, but you can see I get down to a 14.5 inch design capability with this machine. Now, every machine is going to be a little different. What they list their size as and what the machine is actually capable of stitching. So this is just one example of one type of machine and what kind of design you're capable of getting with that. So I hope this answers the question about what size design that you could do. We know that a lot of people come in with that question, but also there's one thing that I would like to add just as a tip. A lot of times people are getting a new machine and they're afraid to load one of their quilts on it and get started. And we really don't recommend that the first thing you put on is an actual quilt. As you see here, I just put on some plain solid fabric for this demonstration, but I would tell customers to do the same thing when they're learning how to quilt on the machine. Load some inexpensive fabric on the machine that you're willing to test stitching on. You could do your thread tension, test what size design you can do, play with loading a panto or some other methodology of doing a design, but you don't have to worry about messing up one of your quilt tops. This way you could practice. It gets you started on the machine. It gives you some muscle memory and lets you do some testing without worrying about ruining something that you've spent a lot of time making. So go out and use one of your coupons, get some cheap fabric. I don't recommend getting cheap batting because that will affect your tension, and I don't recommend getting cheap thread. But just get some plain fabric and get started on your quilt. That way you can do some testing and not worry about messing up something in the long run. I hope you have a good afternoon, and thanks for joining us.